Actually conclude this series on membership. Some of you are saying, yay, it's about time. But today I want us to actually look at servanthood versus selfishness. And when we become Christians, we're supposed to be servants, not being out for everything that we can get. But so far with looking at membership, we've looked at what it means. We've discovered that we're many, but we make up one body, and that body is the bride of Christ. We've looked at local church membership means, and that we want to be a part of what God is doing in the local church, so we take out membership. And it involves more than just coming on Sundays and to other events and not really doing a whole lot more than just showing up. But when we take out membership, we want to be involved and take that next step so that we're a part of everything that's going on. Last week I mentioned that this series was kind of birthed from a book by Tom Rainer called I Am a Church Member. And he writes that when we take out membership, we want more than just have it be about us. We want to see as many people as we can come to know Christ, to come and partake, and to come and be involved with us as well. He says that it's more about serving than it is about being served. He writes that the word servant occurs 57 times in the New Testament. Some of those were in reference to a person who had the role of servant. But most times, the references were about taking the role that we're to take as Christians. He also says that the word serve occurs 58 times in the New Testament. So that's 115 times the word servant or serve is mentioned in 27 books. That's a lot. That means it's something we should pay attention to, something that we should be taking notice of. Jesus himself said that he didn't come to be served, but rather he came to serve. We're going to look at Mark 10, verses 35 to 45, and we're going to see that serving is more important than being served. Mark 10, verse 35 says, Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him saying, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And he, Jesus, said to them, What do you want me to do for you? We want you to do whatever we ask. Okay, what is it you want? Now here we see James and John. It tells us they're the sons of Zebedee, asking Jesus to essentially be their genie. I want this, I want it this way, I want this, I want it my way. Here's how it's going to go. You do what we ask and poof, everything will be happy. Now in Mark 3:17, it says that Jesus called James and John, and I have no idea if I'm going to pronounce this word right, but it says he called them Boanerges, which translates sons of thunder. Now you don't get called sons of thunder for no reason. There's a reason why somebody says you're a son of thunder. So whether Zebedee was a loud and boisterous person, or whether James and John were loud and boisterous and unpredictable, we're not sure who the reference was to. But we know that being referenced as sons of thunder, there was more to that than just calm and quiet and go peacefully. But I want to point out that Jesus doesn't balk at their request. He hears them out. He doesn't say, whoa, 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 you don't tell me what to do. But he says, what is it that you want? So in verse 37, they tell him what they want. They said to him, grant us that we may sit one on your right hand and the other on your left in your glory. But Jesus said to them, you do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Now in verse 38, we find the issue with continually asking to be served. When we want it our way, when we want it to be this way or no way at all. And that is, as Jesus told James and John, you don't know what it is you ask for. When we focus on what we want, when we focus on making ourselves comfortable, we miss that there are probably many others who would be very uncomfortable with what we desire as our comfort level. Some like it hot, some like it a little bit cool. Some like sweet things, some like salty and tart things. Some like it loud, some like it quiet. Some like it traditional and predictable, and other people like it contemporary and not knowing what's coming next. But Jesus tells James and John, you don't truly know what it is you're asking for. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and you look at the menu and it might have pictures, but it doesn't describe what is in the dish? It just says that it's whatever dish and the price. It might have a picture, but sometimes what looks like one thing turns out to be something else. Well, back a few years ago, actually, I believe it was 2003, Brandy and I went to San Francisco for a vacation. We stayed near Fisherman's Wharf. San Francisco's all hills. We stayed up the hill from Fisherman's Wharf. And we were on the cusp of the financial district, Fisherman's Wharf, and Chinatown. So we were in an interesting place in San Francisco. Well, we went to Chinatown one night for supper. San Francisco has one of the largest Chinatowns in all of North America. And the menu had pictures, Chinese with descriptions in Chinese, but in English it just had the title of what the dish was, and the description was not in English. So they had this dish called seafood platter. Now, I was not expecting it to be clams and scallops and deep fried haddock like we would here. I knew it was going to be interesting, but I had no idea what I was going to get. Well, it came out. I still don't know what some of the things were. They tasted really good. Most of it was calamari, squid, and it was actually really good. I was really surprised. But I had no idea what to expect when I ordered it. And surprisingly enough, it was one of the cheaper dishes that was on their menu. So I had no idea what the seafood was. And then it was served with a side of steamed veggies, mostly broccoli. It tasted really good, and which worked out in my benefit, but when I ordered it, I had no idea what it was. But Jesus was telling James and John, they have no idea what they're asking for. I pointed to the picture, this looks good, I want this. That they would have to drink the cup which Jesus was drinking and receive the baptism that Jesus received. Now, he wasn't talking about water baptism. He was talking about the baptism of the Holy Spirit for the strength to endure what it was that he was enduring. And Jesus received that when he went into the desert for the 40 days and 40 nights. But he was telling them that you have no idea what it's going to take to get what you ask. When we want it our way, to be served rather than to serve, the cost of getting that might not seem to be that much, but eternally it's greater than a price we're willing to pay. How many people do we drive away because we want it our way? Because we want it to be a certain temperature, because we want it to be certain songs, because we only want certain instruments. How many people do we drive away because of that? And yet, many times, we respond just like James and John did to Jesus, saying, you don't know what you ask. Are you able to drink? Are you able to be baptized? Verse 39 says, they said to him, we're able. Why not? We're able. So Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink the cup that I drink, and with the baptism I am baptized, you will be baptized. Then verse 40, he says, but to sit on my right hand and on my left, it's not mine to give, but it is for those to whom it has been prepared. Jesus tells them they'll certainly pay the price. One way or another, they will pay the price. But Jesus also tells them that it's not up to me who gets those seats. They're prepared for somebody that my Father has instructed. Now, in the Bible it says that Jesus sits at the right hand of God the Father. So that means unless his seat moves, God is automatically at his left. That only leaves the right seat. And as much as I love Jesus and as much as I want to serve him, I don't want that seat. Because that seat means there's a lot of responsibility with it. And that's what Jesus was getting at. You don't know the responsibility you need to have to sit in that spot. We will pay the price either now or later when we want it our way. And sometimes it's both, because we don't realize who it is that we're not attracting, that if we just change one little thing, we'd have many. We need to be more like the attitude of Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. Paul says, for though I am free from all men, he's not a slave to anybody. He says, I have made myself a servant to all that I might win the more. He says, I'm not bound to anybody, I'm not bound to anything, but I make myself available to all people in whatever role they want, so that I can interact with them and tell them that Jesus loves them. Paul's mission was to win the world for Christ. Jesus' mission was to come and make the way available for all to get to the Father. He did that. Paul's mission was to go and tell the goodness of God to as many people as he could and get everybody saved. Our mission is the same as Paul's. Jesus himself left us what we call the Great Commission. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, baptizing those who believe, making disciples. Here's the thing. Honey attracts more ants than vinegar. And as I believe it was Julie Andrews in Bedknobs and Broomsticks from many, many moons ago, saying a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. a little bit of kindness goes a long way. When we give our life to Christ, we're called to serve. We're called to love, and we're called to think of others before we think of ourselves. The problem is that today the world is conditioning us to fight for our rights. Fight for what we want. If we don't fight for it, nobody else is going to fight for us. But when we reach out and put others first, in the long run, we end up with more people happy because we get an easier shot at what it is that we want because we make more connections. When we fight for our own way, others get hurt and offended. And as we'll see in verse 41, it was no different because the other 10 disciples heard and they saw red. They weren't happy with James and John. Verse 41 says, "And when the 10 heard it, they began to be greatly displeased with James and John. But Jesus called them to himself and said to them, 'You know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them.'" In other words, I'm the boss, that's why. I'm the dad, that's why. I'm the mom, that's why. It's often our answer when kids say, "Well, how come?" "Because I said so." Jesus is saying, we like to lord over those that we're above. So Jesus calls in the 10 and explains to them that selfish reasons won't get us very far. Won't get them very far. And he says, if you desire a position of importance, serve first. He explains that to be his disciple, they cannot rule over others, but they must start by serving others. Verse 43 says, "Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you desires to be first shall be slave of all." So in other words, he's saying, you want the top spot? Serve. When people see that you're willing to help others, you'll get the top spot. Because they know you're not going to go around and order everybody on what to do. You're going to help them achieve what needs to be done. One of the rules that they gave us in Bible college for ministry was when you become a leader in a church, never ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. If you're not willing to scrub a toilet, don't go and hire a janitor so that somebody will scrub the toilet. Now, it's not saying that as the leader, you're supposed to scrub the toilets. But when you see the toilet needs to be scrubbed, you take 5 minutes and you scrub the toilet without picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, "The toilet at the church is disgusting. Can you come clean it?" But never give out something that you're not willing to do yourself. You give it out to somebody else because there are other things that require your attention more so than that. But it also means that the next time it comes around to being done again and you've got an extra few minutes, you go and make sure it's done. That's essentially what Jesus was saying. Don't call people to come and do what you're not willing to do yourself. Now, in verse 43, where it says, "Yet it shall not be among you, but whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant." The disciples, the other 10, could have took that and ran miles with it. "Oh, you want to be the two great ones next to Jesus, huh? Well, Jesus said you got to serve, so we want We sometimes have people like that as well. You want to be great? You got to start off on the bottom rung. But what Jesus was saying was that for not them to be seeking a position of authority and ruling, but that to get ahead and to exceed in the mission, they must be willing to serve. They must be willing to offer themselves to others who they see in need. And then he says in verse 44, whoever of you desires to be first shall be a slave of all. So in other words, he's saying if you want to be in the top spot, if you're fighting for that top spot so you can be in control, you're going to be a slave. What is it that we're going to be a slave to? A slave to our own desires. A slave to our own lust. Our slave to the world, because we think we have to fight to get where we want, and we're going to go and push ourselves to get there. Why are people so discontented these days? Because they all want the best. They all want to be the one at the top. And because they can't get it, they become miserable. Because they can't get what they want. When they realize if they just pitch in and help somebody else achieve their goal, they'll be closer to their own. And in verse 45, Jesus sets the precedent. And he states that even he didn't come to be served, but rather he came to serve. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Give his life as a ransom for many. It goes back to what Jesus responded to James and John, that in order to get what you desire, you have to live for others, not for yourself. Jesus came to pay death and hell, the ransom for our souls. That's what he said. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink? Are you able to be baptized in the baptism that I've been baptized with? We can't pay it ourselves. We can't pay it for somebody else. But the good news is Jesus already paid it. We sing the hymn sometimes, he paid a debt he did not owe, I owed a debt I could not pay. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. It's our job to serve each other, to serve those we interact with on a daily basis, so that they can receive the gift that Jesus freely offers. As Paul said, become all things to all people so that we may win the more. Tom Rainer lists 10 of the top selfish reasons that churches face. And he says they're found in churches that are inward focused more than mission focused. They focus on who and what they have or had, not on reaching others and adding to the kingdom. Now, I'm not sure if they're listed in order of dominance or importance, but this is the order that he gave them in. Number 1 was worship wars. I only want hymns. I only want organ. I don't want nothing else. Well, I don't want hymns and I don't want an organ and I want guitars and drums. And Number 2 was prolonged minutiae meetings. We meet about everything. We discuss until we're all blue and tired and nothing gets done except that we wasted 3 hours being frustrated. Number 3 is facility focused. We focus on the building, on the pews, on the decor, on whatever. Number 4 is program driven. We've got to have a Sunday school, we've got to have a youth group, we've got to have a kids club, we've got to have Bible study, we've got to have prayer, we've got to have something every single night of the week because that's what churches do. No. If it's only us that are coming, the programs are pointless. Yes, there are discipleship programs that are necessary, but discipleship programs should also be drawing in new people. An inwardly focused budget. We spend money on making it more comfortable, making it more appealing to us, not to those who are coming. There's an inordinate demand for pastoral care. Nobody wants anybody else to help them except the pastor. That's what we pay him for. Well, when you get a couple hundred people in a church, the pastor's not helping everybody. But we're supposed to be willing for everybody to help. And if the pastor's busy helping everybody that's in the church, he's not reaching and ministering to those outside of the church. Attitudes of entitlement. My grandfather built the church. My father was born in the front pew. I was born on the back pew. And I get to have. There's a greater concern about changes than about the gospel being shared. Number nine is anger and hostility. We can't get our own way, so we blow up at everybody. And number 10 is evangelistic apathy. I don't care if nobody new comes. I'm happy seeing the same people. Why do we have to have new people? They ruin everything. After the list, he says, in almost every behavior listed, church members were looking out for their own needs and their preferences. They want it their way and they don't want things to change. It's a me, myself, and I outlook. And Rainer concludes his thoughts on this by saying that church membership from a biblical perspective, however, is about servanthood. It's about giving. It's about putting others first. The other thing I will say about the list of the 10 things that I just read, most of the churches that he looked at are no longer operating because that was the attitudes that they had. They're closed out. Nobody is there. James and John had the me first attitude. We want to be on one side and the other. They wanted to be recognized for their participation in Jesus' ministry. And the story shows us that the disciples were not much different than we are. We're 2,000 years advanced in time, but we are the same. If we closely look at the 12, we see ourselves in at least one and sometimes multiple of the disciples. But here's the other thing. The disciples were used mightily by God for the advancing of the kingdom. When they recognized that doing it God's way and the way that Jesus taught, they were going to be better and get further than if they did it their own way. When we catch a hold of the mission and we're willing to serve, not out of a requirement, not out of, well, I go here, I guess I should do something, but when we do it because we have a yearning and a desire to see more people come, then we're on the right page. Taking out membership is the next logical step because how can we expect people to come and join us when we're not willing to join ourselves? How can we say we're looking for members, but, well, I go, but I'm not a member. Well, how come you're not a member? Oh, well, that's a good reason. I don't think I want to be a member either. We can't expect somebody to come and be a part when we refuse to go the whole way ourselves. As I've already mentioned, I've titled this message Servanthood versus Selfishness, because it's only with a servant's attitude that we can accomplish our mission. When we're out to put others first, when we're out to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help our community, we will actually get further. When we have selfish tendencies and when we fight and argue to be heard and to get our own way, we've lost our purpose and we really have no reason to meet because we're just a social club. But when we're out to reach the lost at all cost, then we have everything we need for being a part. Then we're fully on mission, and Jesus is our clear focus. I don't know how many of you read Pastor Kevin's article in the paper on the weekends, but the one that was in yesterday's paper was phenomenal. He said, churches that meet the needs of the community will grow. Exactly what we've been talking about this morning. If we're willing to serve our community will become a part of who we are. But if we're not willing to serve and we want it our way and our way only, we'll never get the community in here. Our sign says, "My Father's house," and right under that says, "Serving the community." And I'm very happy to say we're doing that. But you know what? We can do it more. Where else can we say we want food for the food bank? And over the month, Jocelyn counted it up this morning, and there's 40-some before you get to the basket. We ask for 50, well, we shoot for 50 items. We're probably close to 75. And we still have another week. The last month when I took them in, we had 55 items, all cans and jars to take in. And they were extremely grateful and extremely happy to see that. And a couple of the items we took in, the slot on the shelf at the food bank was completely empty. We filled it. Actually, I believe it was the larger cans of soup. As I was walking in, I just missed somebody who took the last can. And we had 20-some cans that went in. So it's fantastic that we are serving. But we have to remember the attitude that we need to continually serve and continually look for ways not to get our own way, but to be able to reach the more. To take the words of Paul and become all people, all things to all people, that we might be able to reach the more. I want us to end this morning by singing the song we began with. It's time for the reign of God. And I don't know if you picked up on the theme, but I went through and picked ones that talked about serving God, about serving each other, about living a life that is pleasing to God and draws others in. Like Jesus, all for Jesus. When we're fully committed to Jesus, we're doing everything we can to serve him. I will serve thee because I love thee. That not only goes to God, but when we have a love and a longing for the lost to come to know God like we know God, we're going to serve them as well because we love them as well. You're my King. Amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Jesus said, no greater love has any man than this, then he's willing to lay down his life for his friends. Not that he has to, but he's willing should that come and be. And then the heart of worship. When there's nothing else and it's me and you, God, is my heart in that right place? Or do I think worship is only when I'm with everybody at church and we're singing to loud music and then on bended knee I come, with a humble heart I come, bowing down before your holy throne. We wouldn't think of entering, well, we have a queen, into the queen's chamber area where she sits on her throne. We wouldn't think of bursting in and screaming at her and yelling at her and saying, I want, I want, I want. For one, we wouldn't get much more than 15 feet before we're surrounded. But we sometimes approach God that way. I want, I want, I want, I want. And we forget who God actually is. But this song, it's time for the reign of God. We have to get it for our own life before we can get it corporately and globally. But when we offer God to rule and reign our own life, we'll see that spread like a pebble dropped into a puddle. The further out it goes, the bigger the circles are, the bigger the ripples are. And when we're that pebble and we say, okay, God, come and take control of my life. I want to do and live my life the way that you've called me to. We will see the greater impact go further and further and further. We'll get you to stand as we sing this in closing.